Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I had to step out real fast. I had to take care of some business with my grandmother, and I come home to see that Karl Anthony Towns was just traded to the New York Knicks. And this is such a big blockbuster trade to happen so far into the offseason, and it's a lose-lose for both franchises. You go this entire offseason if you're the New York Knicks. I'm like, yeah, we're going to bring the Nova Knicks together. We're going to bring in Jalen Brunson. We're going to bring in Mikal Bridges. We're going to bring in Dante DiVincenzo. We're going to bring in Josh Hart. These guys are going to get real minutes together. They're going to play. They're going to have that chemistry. They're going to lock up. They're going to hit threes. And before the offseason is over, you go and trade for Karl Anthony Towns. Two teams that had realistic finals chances just ruined their chemistry so they could not get better or they could not get worse. If you are the New York Knicks and you bring in Karl Anthony Towns, let's assume that the starting lineup is Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Karl Anthony Towns, and Mitchell Robinson. If I look at this team just off paper, they're not any better without Julius Randle now. And for the Minnesota Timberwolves, I can somewhat understand you need floor spacing. Dante DiVincenzo provides that, and you don't want to be stuck on Karl Anthony Towns' contract, so I understand it. But at the end of the day, a championship window is so small, and you guys had the perfect opportunity to still be the best defense in the league. You guys provided exactly what you needed to beat some of these bigger teams like the 76ers or the Bucks if you were to see them in the finals, and the Denver Nuggets if you were to see them again this season. And yet, instead of giving it one more year after seeing what the Minnesota Timberwolves can really be at the top of their game, getting to the Western Conference Finals, which is the first time that has happened since 2004, you guys go and you trade Karl Anthony Towns, your number one pick. Your number one pick, the guy you picked up back in 2016 who was supposed to save your franchise. And I understand that he was not that. I understand that he may have been a little underwhelming, especially due to the expectation we had of him in his first 2 or 3 seasons. But he has still provided a high level of basketball for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And now you're trading him away to not get any better. You are not getting any better. And if you ask me, Julius Randle is such a question mark when it comes to the postseason that why would you even take the risk? Why would you even take the risk? So the Minnesota Timberwolves have traded picks from 2030 and 2031. Who knows what's going to happen in 2030 or 2031? And then you let go of your number one pick back in 2016, and you get no better from it. So when I look at both sides of this deal, this is a trade that did not need to happen. And now I'm sitting here scratching my head because at some point, I can understand from both sides. Because if you're the New York Knicks, you feel like you can contend now. You feel like that big man rotation was very shallow. You bring in Karl Anthony Towns, who's an all-star level big and one of the greatest floor stretchers at the big man position that we have ever seen. I can understand that. With the Minnesota Timberwolves, you want to get off of Karl Anthony Towns, who is a top 10 highest paid player in the NBA. You bring in a floor spacer in Dante DiVincenzo. But how much better does this make either team? Because if you ask me, there are moments where Karl Anthony Towns is just as inconsistent in the playoffs as Julius Randle. There are times where Karl Anthony Towns gets himself into some unnecessary foul trouble and is not allowed to play or takes himself out of the game in very big situations because of his foul trouble. And with the Minnesota Timberwolves, you're losing Karl Anthony Towns, who just had his greatest defensive postseason, his greatest offensive postseason, his greatest postseason in his career. And you were right there. You had the blueprint. I think they would have matched up against Boston way better than the Mavericks would have. And you go in, you have another year of Anthony Edwards who put on a show in the playoffs. Karl Anthony Towns, there was problems where he was fouling too early. He was inconsistent at some moments, but you have the blueprints. You just went to the ECF for the first time in 20 years. This is the deepest playoff run you guys have had since 2004. In my opinion, you bring that team back and you see if you guys can go all the way this season. So I just feel like this is one of the most unnecessary blockbuster trades we have had in some recent years. Because both of these teams, they fell short of the ultimate goal in the NBA, but with the moves they made, especially the New York Knicks, you feel confident in both of these teams before they make the trade. So it's really puzzling to me. Yes, Karl Anthony Towns is a big name. Yes, Julius Randle is a big name. But which one of these teams got better? I think Julius Randle is a ball stopper offensively. He's a ball stopper. I think Karl Anthony Towns is extremely inconsistent at times. And that's no slouch to either one of these players. Both of these guys are fantastic players. But when we look at what the Knicks were building with the Nova Knicks, they didn't even get one game together. One game. That is crazy. And I understand you guys have Nas Reed, and I know the agenda pushing was so much during the regular season. I even made a video on TikTok and saying how depending on how Nas Reed plays when Karl Anthony Towns is out is going to show if Karl Anthony Towns is expendable or not. And Nas Reed did play well. He averaged about 21 points in that stretch where Karl Anthony Towns was not playing. But you can see clear as day in the playoffs that Nas Reed was not providing the amount of defense that Karl Anthony Towns was providing, especially in that Denver Nuggets series. Even in the Phoenix Suns series where he was guarding Kevin Durant on the perimeter. Is Julius Randle doing that? No. Is Julius Randle the three-point shooter that Karl Anthony Towns is? No. And when you have a team in Minnesota, which the need was glaring, you needed another player who can create on the perimeter and hit outside shots, because the way Dallas played you guys played right into their hands. They forced Anthony Edwards to be more of a playmaker, more of a floor general, and he's just not at that point in his game yet. And it did not help that he did not have consistent floor spacing in that series. So you let go of Karl Anthony Towns, you bring in Dante DiVincenzo, which is just fine, but he is not a perimeter creator either. He is an off-ball guy. So I'm just very confused with the trade. I just feel like neither one of these teams needed this. I really don't understand, because the more I think about it, the more I'm like, how much is both of these teams really going to improve? The Minnesota Timberwolves did not become a clear favorite, and neither did the Knicks. Like, I still don't see a world where the Knicks are just blowing. I don't see a world where the Bucks can't beat them in a 7-game series. I don't see a world where the 76ers cannot beat them in a series. I don't see a world where the Boston Celtics can beat them in a series. So this just throws a wrench into the entire season. And now I have to rethink all the standings. I just burped. So everybody in the comments, let me know what you guys think of this trade. I think it was really pointless. I really think it was pointless, but hey, basketball talks are back, baby. The season starts in a couple of weeks.